Okay, my friends, welcome to this video, yeah. And I was reading an article, as I do, in Cecil J. Purdy's book, The Search for Chess Perfection. And he reproduced an article that was written in the 1950s by the then champion of Australia, Ortivin Sarapu. And it was a technique attributed to Grandmaster Levenfish, who was a famous grandmaster back in the day, and who actually gives his name, I think, to a variation of the Sicilian defence. And it's a technique for ascertaining the strengths and weaknesses that are inherent in a chess position. Now, why is this important? Because essentially there are four scenarios that can happen. We can either strengthen our own position, or we can eliminate our weaknesses, or we can diminish the strength of our opponent's position and accentuate their weaknesses. But in order for us to do this, or to be able to do this, we need to extract information from the chessboard to ascertain who is better, where they are better, and why they are better. Or in fact, where they are weak, and why they are weak, etc. And once we have gleaned this information, we can then use it to formulate plans and ideas. The technique that Grandmaster Levenfish advocated was doing a piece by piece and pawn by pawn comparison. If you'd like to spend some time with me, we can do that now with this position that is before us. Perhaps you'd like to pause the video and try and extract some information from the chessboard for yourself before we do an explanation. The first thing you'll notice about the position is that there is a material disparity. White has an extra rook for a bishop and a pawn. Well, okay. Let's compare the pieces. Let's start with the kings. White king has practically no mobility because this bishop cuts it off and it's entombed by its own pawns. Black king has mobility to come into the centre, so we give black a little edge here with regard to the kings. Let's take a look at the queens. The queen here is nursing this c-pawn, which is under some strong pressure. She's also left to guard the f2 square because the knight has some scope to come in here and deliver a check. I'm sure she would be much rather, she's a formidable attacking piece, and I'm sure she would be much happier doing something else than guarding a pawn and a weak square. But okay. The black queen is also nursing the f-pawn, which is attacked by this rook. She has good scope for movement though. At present though, she is undefended though, and the knight here and is in fact pinned to the queen because the queen is undefended. So she's undefended and nursing a pawn, but has good scope. I would say it's pretty even at present, although I think the white queen is just a little bit curtailed in her movement because of the weakness of the c-pawn and the f2 square. Let's take a look at the rook, the king's rook, in comparison to the bishop and the pawn. It has some pressure down the f-file. It's forcing the queen here to guard the f-pawn. It also must guard the f2 square. for the knight. The bishop, I think, cuts right across the centre of the chessboard, and it semi-pins this pawn here on g2 to the king. It's kind of even at present, although because of this semi-pin here, I would give the bishop just a little bit of edge at the present. If we compare the other rooks here, well, I think it's safe to say the black rook is superior to the A rook because it's putting pressure on the C pawn here, whereas the A rook is not really in the game. If we look at the dark square bishops, well, this bishop here, it's mostly a defensive piece because it's again tied to the defense of this C pawn here, whereas black's dark square bishop again cutting right through the centre and restricting the mobility of the white king. I would have to say that this is a superior piece to this here. If we look at the knights, this knight is putting pressure here on the C pawn, but this knight here has quite a strong threat. It can come to the protected square on e5, hitting the light square bishop and the rook at the same time. The square e5 being protected by the bishop. So I think this is a greater threat than putting pressure here on the C pawn. It's quite a serious threat, this. Hitting these squares here. Let's take a look at the pawns, right? I mean, A pawns are pretty even. Okay, this is a little bit further advanced, but there's nothing in it. The B pawn is quite interesting. I mean, this is further advanced, right? But it's protected by the C pawn, which is under siege at the moment. And it's attacked by the queen, so it could potentially become very vulnerable. The C pawn is a real weakness here, as we have said. It's under siege. It's being nursed by the queen and the bishop. And if it falls, well, this will fall as well. This is a real weakness in white's position. There is, of course, no E or D pawn. F pawn has no counterpart. Let's take a look at the G pawns. This, in comparison to this, as we said, this is semi-pinned to the king. It's kind of weakish. And this is super strong because it can advance to the G3 square with mating threats. Again, this could possibly advance and it could be a threat. And this here looks to me, in comparison, to be pretty weak. I mean, its main purpose is to prevent a frontal attack against the king, which could result in mate. I think hey, wait a minute, we forgot to cover this knight here in comparison to this. Sorry about that. This knight has serious pressure against the C pawn and all of these squares here. F2, G3, because it comes with jack. We need to ascertain if it's a greater threat than the knight coming to E5. But we can do that in the course of time. So it's actually black to move. And we have ascertained the weaknesses. The C pawn is super weak. F2 square is pretty weak. And these pawns here are weak. This one being semi-pinned. And this one simply cannot move because a frontal assault against the king. So now we know where the weaknesses are, we can try to look at forcing continuations, checks, captures, and forcing moves. In order for us to make use of like this weakness here on f2, we probably need to put more pressure on it with something like g3. And this of course threatens mate with the queen coming to h4 and checkmate here. If white does something, let's say, carries out his own threat, then white in fact gets mated with this beautiful combination here. It's a double check, king's got to move, and that is in fact checkmate. So, I mean, g3 looks pretty serious, right? Problem with it is that white does not have to play knight e5. He can in fact play something like bishop here, preventing the queen coming to the h file. It's a strong idea nevertheless, and would seem to be stronger than white's knight e5 idea. Let's see if there are any other forcing continuations. What if we can make use of the weakness of the h-pawn? Remember, it simply cannot move because we're going to bring the queen. It has got to protect the king from frontal attack. So what if we can try and draw it off with a move like knight to g3? It comes with check, and it's practically forcing white to take here. Let's check it out. Knight g3 check. It's practically forcing. And again we can come in with another check. Queen to the h file. White takes. It's checkmate. Look at that. Of course, I mean, white could always try and bail out with something like this here, but again it's just lost. Something like this. Black is threatening mate here and threatening the knight. White is simply lost. So g3 check, making use of the weakness of the h2 pawn, the nature of this pawn here and the strength of this bishop here, just simply wins for black. This beautiful combination here. And we were able to realize this by extracting information from the chessboard, where the strengths and where the weaknesses lie. And the author of the article, Master Sarapu, he says, when it's your opponent's move, it's much better to spend your time doing some type of reconnaissance on the position, trying to extract information from the position rather than wondering what move our opponent is going to make when he can only in fact make one move. And Cecil Purdy, in citing this article, says it's not a foolproof technique, but it's a great way of systematically going through a position, getting information from the chessboard in positions that otherwise you might have missed. And doing it in a systematic way helps us do this. So, if you're practicing tactics, my chess friends, and normally we do practice chess tactics, rather than simply try and solve the position, why don't you try a piece-by-piece comparison? Extract information from the chessboard. And when it comes to playing games of chess and you're waiting for your opponent to move, you can try this little technique out and see what types of information the chessboard throws up that can help you to formulate plans and ideas. So hopefully you enjoyed the little presentation. It's just a little practical technique that I thought you might like to know about. And suffice to say, thank you very much for taking the time, and I wish you well with your own chess. Take care, and bye-bye.
It must have been for a cause. Our lives have so many doors. Don't think about him anymore. But it was the kiss that took me away. It's like he knew that I am fragile. He handled me like glass. And knowing this, I know that he'll get his. But I don't want the man to suffer, not the way I am. Because deep down I know that he's class too. But it really doesn't matter till it's happening to you. Everybody breaks, oh, oh. Everybody breaks. Sometimes everybody breaks.